Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. To hit the right note is today's phrase, and that means to do or say something in a way that's incredibly effective or well received. For example, his speech really hit the right note with the audience. The comedian's jokes hit the right note, making everyone laugh. The restaurant's atmosphere hits the right note for a romantic dinner. The company's marketing campaign hit the right note, resonating with their audience. To hit the right note. Now, this is actually very, very common. As you can probably guess, it comes from music. Because if you think of the keys on a piano, when you play them, you're hitting a note. That just means you're making a particular sound. So if you hit the right note, obviously you're following music, which is correct. And if you hit the right note as a metaphor, that simply means that you're creating the right ambience, you're creating the right mood for a particular thing to happen. Now, of course, we can use it with anything. The boss hit the right note when he offered the employees a pay rise. But we often use it about music as well. For example, last night in Europe was Eurovision, and somebody called Nemo, that was the entry for Switzerland, he hit the right note. He won. Now, of course, I'm not directly relating Nemo's performance to hitting the right note. This is a metaphor, okay? So his music clearly is very good. He hit the right note with his audience, and because it is a musical act, to say he hit the right note is a nice, meaningful coincidence. We're going to read the story about Nemo today. It's a little bit complex, so we're going to go through it slowly, and there's a lot of new words here which will help us to understand more about Nemo and what happened yesterday. So it says here, and this is from the Observer, Switzerland has won the 68th Eurovision Song Contest, ending a fraught and at times tumultuous competition. Swiss singer Nemo, who defines as non-binary, entered the night as the bookmakers' third favorite. Now, if we just look at that one more time, a fraught and tumultuous competition really is just talking about anxious and confused, I think would be the best way to describe it. Fraught means anxious, and tumultuous means confused, maybe disorderly. So this song contest, it says here, Nemo won the 68th Eurovision Song Contest, ending a fraught, that's anxious, and at times tumultuous, disorderly competition. Swiss singer Nemo, who defines as non-binary, entered the night as the bookmaker's third favourite. Someone who defines as non-binary means somebody who doesn't easily fit into the category of male or female. Now, this is becoming fairly common across our media spectrum here. And there's an increasing number of people who don't feel okay fitting into society's norms of masculine and feminine. This takes many different shapes, so it's impossible for me to define exactly what non-binary is. But what I can tell you is that Nemo does not define himself as male or female, and therefore he uses the pronouns they rather than he or she. Now, you can hear there the difficulties in talking about non-binary people because of the pronouns. Just a second ago, I said he doesn't easily fit in, when of course I should immediately have used the pronoun they. So it's very difficult to try to give you a description using the correct pronouns of what a non-binary person is. Swiss singer Nemo, who defines as non-binary, entered the night as the bookmaker's third favourite. So a bookmaker is the man you go to in the UK if you want to place a bet. So if you want to gamble, if you want to, see who's going to win in the horse race and place some money to say who's going to win, then that's betting. And to do that, the shop in the UK you go to is the bookmaker. And these days, I think most of it's online, isn't it? So you would go to a bookmaker's website. It's very strange that we call these agencies or places bookmakers, the place you go to gamble. I have no idea why we do that. It has nothing to do with making books to read, but it obviously has a meaning in very old English. Eurovision is a song contest which takes place every year. It's very interesting because it's usually very alternative. And as you know, the arts, music, dance, poetry, literature, can be used as a protest for particular things. And Eurovision started off as a very respectable song contest. And these days it represents something which is all about changing society. It pushes the boundaries, particularly around gender, peace, war. It is very interesting, and it is a very good example of how music can be used to change attitudes and minds. Now, Britain usually comes last. Historically, nobody likes Britain, and that's because, of course, we are known for our, lack of creativity in song contests like this. But also, Britain, despite its rich legacy and history with music, we don't really honour the arts here. In fact, usually with changes in government policies, the arts are the first things to suffer. Whenever there's austerity or problems with the economy, the first thing the governments do is shut down artistic institutions that they're funding, particularly relating to the arts. At the moment, we have free entry to British museums and art galleries. And of course, as austerity continues in the UK, that's the kind of thing that the government will immediately target to try to make money from. I think the problem is that in a society like the UK, which is really, really capitalist, the arts represents something which isn't easy to make money from. The arts, creativity can't easily be priced. I mean, the high-end part of the arts industry, if we can call it that, does sell, of course, but generally speaking, art is not high on the list of something that's a money maker. Music is, if you attach it to social media or stream it in the right way, but even then, there's an expectation that it's going to be free. So it's very difficult for the government to see how they get money from the arts. And as a direct result of that, here in the UK at least, arts aren't celebrated. It's something which has almost evolved into middle class or rich people's lives. It's not something which is easily available for everyone. Of course, we can make our own art, we can make our own creativity, and these days we can broadcast that, so it's much easier. But here, art is not something which you really see mainstream. And Eurovision, I think, is almost a reflection of that, because our entries are usually absolutely awful. I mean, I'm just looking at this year's UK entry. I'm sure some people really appreciated it, but I didn't really see very much that's creative about it. The choreography is very good. But you know, when Europeans try to make these lovely, beautiful, romantic movies, and they deal with sensuality in such beautiful ways, I think in Britain, when we try that, it just doesn't work very well. So Eurovision last night was a really good example of that. Eurovision is the world's largest live music event. It really is something which is worth taking a look at. It's every year it offers more and more alternative viewpoints through the medium of singing and dancing. Another example of hitting the right note is another news story which is going around the UK today, and that's because in the extreme north of Scotland there's an archaeological site with prehistoric ruins, and after 20 years of excavation they've decided to rebury it, to protect it for the future. And that's obviously hit the right notes with archaeologists, but for the rest of us, we're kind of scratching our heads and wondering why. It says here, in a few weeks, archaeologists will gather at the Ness of Brodgar in Orkney, and for the next 2 months, excavate at this site, which is one of Europe's greatest prehistoric sites. Then, on the 16th of August, soil will be tipped over. That just means poured into the ancient walls to cover up once again this site. And it seems like an extraordinary decision to tip loads of earth over this place again. But archaeologists are saying this is definitely the right thing to do. They're saying that what they've discovered is just, as we say in English, the tip of the iceberg, a very small part of something much, much greater. And they're saying there are more than 100 buildings here. Underneath the most recent ones, there's older ones. They go on to say, we want to avoid destroying them in order to get at those which lie underneath. So if we cover this up now, future generations with new technologies will come back here and will be able to uncover these buildings once again without damaging them. Well, on one hand, they have hit the right note, is what I want to say, with other archaeologists who are saying this is the only way to protect a building like this. But on the other hand, there's people like me saying, what? No, dig for goodness sake. But I can understand why they would want to protect it, because this site apparently is really very, very important. But well, from my point of view, in the coming years, either there'll be earthquakes or there will be other things like aliens landing, and I'm not sure that this place will be fully protected. So I don't know, but very interesting, very interesting. A few weeks ago on this podcast, I was giving you the heads up, a phrase we use in English just to let you know that some changes were forthcoming, and some of those have already started. So hopefully you're hearing a difference with the audio quality. If you're listening to this on YouTube, you'll have noticed as well that I've been posting a lot more YouTube clips than usual to help you with your English. And if you want to see those, don't forget to subscribe to me on YouTube as well. Another thing which has been happening is I'm changing the service which helps me record and manage these podcasts. There's a few different options available for doing that, but I think I've more or less found one of my favorites. And while I've been doing that, you may have noticed that volume levels have been going up and down on this podcast on different platforms. But I think that's resolved now, and I'm really hoping that you are enjoying these podcasts because I do them to help you with your English. Rather than taking a grammatical approach of telling you I am, you are, he is, she is, I feel it's much better if you hear English and if I encourage you to use it. As I always say, British people, we don't go to the pub in the evening and talk about grammar over a nice beer. We don't say, oh, you know, I used a lovely conditional today, and everyone very happily applauds. It's nothing like that. So, of course, using English is much more important. And that's why listening and studying these podcasts is very, very important. Another good thing about using a podcast provider or changing a podcast provider is, thanks to AI, the transcriptions now will more or less be perfect. Because a big problem in doing these podcasts is sitting down and creating transcripts. And in the past, these transcripts have not always been perfect. They were partly automated, partly successful, and then of course there's my eyesight, which needs to be taken into consideration as well. So transcripts now going forward should be almost 100% perfect. So enjoy, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye.